Roger, radio check. Stand by 1300 hours, 1 mic out. 1 mic out confirmed. Roger, read 5 by 5. Interrogative.
Roger, good copy.
Roger, that needs sit rep on Byers and Hathaway.
Stand by 1. You know, General Sherman made a statement that war is hell, and for many people it is. And in this modern day war on terror that takes us across the Middle East, heroes have come home to the United States of America from a place where they have left not only body parts, but they've left a lot of hope. In fact, today you'll be hearing from Brandon Byers, United States Air Force, suffered a devastating injury in the war in Iraq. You'll hear from great sergeants, guys like Ronnie Hathaway, and his enjoyment of being part of this great effort of serving not only his country, but serving you in war and recovery. Well, in war and recovery, we're going to cover a lot of material, and in the days to come, weeks and months, you're going to be part of something that's going to change your life. I'm Dave Reaver, and it is exceptionally my privilege to be able to come to you with opportunities to share the stories of modern day heroes. That's right, I'm not a modern day hero. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I want all my Vietnam veteran era friends to hear me. You're part of this too. And as we move through these coming shows, get your friends and family together, because War and Recovery has a story to tell. And I can promise you that story will change your life. It will encourage you. It will take you down a road maybe you've never been. And it will bring to you a sense of pride for the men and women of the United States military who continue to serve our great nation. And I know, without a doubt, that out of war and all the devastation that comes with it, there is recovery. In fact, the man talking to you is a good example to tell you that no matter what you can go through in life, there's an answer and there's a way out. I'm Dave Reaver, and this is War and Recovery.
I was a security forces member for the United States Air Force, and what that means is that I'm a ground pounder. I'm a ground troop. I work more with Army and Marines than I do normal Air Force. So when I deployed to Camp Bucca, Iraq, in the Basra area of Iraq, in the southern tip, I was a ASO member, Area Security Operations. So I did convoy security, intelligence gathering, and patrolled different sectors outside the wire. 5.5 months into my tour, I got hit by a roadside bomb. I was a .50 caliber machine gunner at the rear vehicle at the time, and a roadside bomb went off after we had secured a supply route. And through the grace of God, I lived. I was able to survive, even though I had an artery clipped in my hand, my leg was shredded, and the tip of my left ring finger had been blown off, because they had to put 6 to 7 bags of blood back into me, on top of all the washout surgeries, cleaning out the shrapnel, and trying to save my leg and my hand at the same time. One of the things that I did before I left was I prepared my wife. If a commander, first sergeant, and a chaplain came, that more than likely meant that I had been killed in action. But if it was just the commander and the first sergeant, that meant that I was alive, but something had happened.
I remember opening the door. They wouldn't say anything until we went inside, but it was like an out-of-body experience. While they left, I was there by myself, and it just hit me, and I'm like, our life is never gonna be the same.
And as soon as I was stable enough, they got me on a C-130 where they actually presented my Purple Heart. So I got to Wolford Hall and Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, where I got to see my wife for the first time.
It was surreal to see him laying there, and not so much physically broken. That part wasn't hard. It was seeing his spirit broken in his eyes. It was tough to see as a wife.
I had just medically retired out of the Air Force. I was really depressed. I was pretty down on myself. I had worked really hard to be able to stay in the military. I wanted to do 20 years plus. I really wanted to serve even more then than I did when I first enlisted. So once I got the paperwork to medically retire, I got really angry, really frustrated, nothing was fair, and it was nobody's fault but everybody else's, and definitely not mine.
It was definitely a roller coaster. He would have times where it seemed like he had a really good grip on things, and he was definitely exerting a lot of control over his recovery and the things that were going on around him. But the more control he would get over things, it's like the more tense he got and the more angry he would get, and it was just like a cycle.
When I met Dave, I walked through the door, met him for the first time. I instantly understood that I could no longer feel sorry for myself. You can't meet Dave Reaver and then go back to the pity party that you were having, because that man has been through so much and conquered so much that you have no excuse. You really don't, no matter what you're going through. So he came up, shook my hand, and said, "Well, I heard you've been having a hard time." And what do you say to that? You're looking him straight in the face and you instantly go, "No, I'm fine. I'm perfectly okay. Are you okay?" My leg was literally dying from the inside out. The nerve damage was severe. I had dropped foot. The skin was starting to get bad. I was getting red bumps all over the place. I was losing feeling. I was in pain constantly, and things were just getting worse and worse, to the point where I had a full-time job, but once I was done, once I had enough reserve to get done with my day and I got home, I didn't have any left for my family. So we prayed about it, and we did a lot of research, and we talked to a lot of different doctors, and we came to the conclusion with the doctors that I would have a better quality of life, as well as my family would have a better quality of life, if I had a prosthetic, if I had my leg amputated.
When we arrived in Colorado, that was actually my first time to go. I had never seen anything that stunning in my entire life. But you could feel the love as soon as you walked in. That definitely gave us hope that there was a possibility of not only of us healing, but of us becoming so much more than we ever had imagined that we could be.
It changed everything. It changed my entire perspective on what this is. This was no longer my cross to bear. This was no longer my burden, my affliction. This was my responsibility. This was an empowerment to me. I'm a huge superhero fan, so I love the motto of, with great power comes great responsibility. Well, after going through that program, with great disability or great injury comes great responsibility. As followers of Christ, we have a responsibility to step up to the edge of that pond, per se, and cast that stone and make a ripple. And not have to know exactly where that ripple's going, but knowing that it's flowing, that it's continuously going. Because honestly, that's how you change the world. That's how you change hearts.
Good morning. And we say that to our warriors from Iraq, Afghanistan, and all the way back to Vietnam. I am very excited and pleased that you are with us today. And I hope I have some words that will encourage you, that will also help you in your walk and in your family's walk, being together. I'm 44 years old, and I am a son of a wounded warrior. And I got the opportunity of a lifetime, per se, if that's the way you want to look at it, to be underneath the tutelage and growing up underneath a man of God, my dad. And we started traveling when I was 2 weeks old, and I've been all over the country. I've been to 46 different nations, all 50 states, multiple times in different places, and I've had the opportunity also to go to Iraq and also to Afghanistan in helping our soldiers. But the thing that I really want to talk to you today about is, how do we deal with our children? I have a little experience in this. When I was growing up, watching Dad and how he dealt with post-traumatic stress, and how he navigated through some of the tough times and some of the anger issues, and how that he retaliated back at some things that other people would do or say. And it was always interesting, because here we are with a special forces man, brown water, black beret, part of the Navy elite. And how do you deal with certain issues that pop up that could be troublesome? Do you take your training and go right to it, or do you have to step back and watch? Well, I can tell you for a fact that Dad left a great example before me, and how he did that was because of Jesus Christ. Jesus was the answer, and the only answer that I can tell you that works. I've got the degrees to prove what I have, to be able to tell you, to be able to explain these situations with you. And then I have the experience of being the son of a wounded warrior. When I was growing up in particular, Dad also grew up because he lost his identity. He lost facial recognition. He lost a lot of the things that he had had. And as I was born, I watched and I learned, as kids do. Kids are always very observant. And the old saying of monkey see, monkey do, that's what the kids are like. And they watch very intently. And let me tell you something, the way that you act is the way they're going to act. And if you act violently, well, they're going to act violently because that's what they've been taught. That's what they understand. And then that's what they become very comfortable with. But because Dad had made a conscious decision to take the story that he had had and the tragedy that he had had and turn it into a triumph situation, I grew up under a leadership, and I grew up under a calling to be a man of God. And so that's where it pushed me to be. And watching and learning, it was not always easy, I can tell you that, because there were times when certain things would spark Dad and triggers would set him off, and then I would have to sit back and, you know, what do I do? Do I jump in to help Dad? Do I let Dad cool off a little while? And there were times that you just had to kind of wing it, but you know, through trial and error, you learn these things. And Dad helped. He helped a lot, and I watched, and you know, I was very careful not to push buttons as well, as kids can do. I mean, you know, most of you have kids, and you know how that a kid can push that right button, you know, and whether they do it on purpose or not, you know, but how do you deal with those situations? Do you take your frustrations and anger out on your children? Today's statistics show that combat vets that are coming back, that, you know, in the 80 percentile, they're losing their marriages, and that anger issue turns into spousal abuse, and, you know, and the kids, they end up catching it the worst. They end up catching it worse. And so that's why I'm pushing to you today that if you're looking for an answer on how to make my life better and how do I get over these things, turn it over to God. You know, a lot of people say, well, that's just very cliche-ish. No, turn it over to God, because He is the answer. He can take the tragedy, like I said. He can take that tragedy and turn it around, because I can promise you that my best friend is my dad. We can talk about things. We can go over things. Yeah, we can hash it out, man. We can get right in each other's face and go right back and forth, but when it's all said and done, we hug. There's no fists being thrown. You know, there's no ugly things being said. It's because God made the difference. And if He can do it in our lives, He can do it in your life. Just give Him a chance. Just give Him a chance. You'll see. You can do it.
When I was active duty, I was actually a cadre member with the Charlie Company Wounded Warrior Transition Battalion. I was doing a lot of the outreach programs like that, trying to get the soldiers back out into the civilian sector. After doing that for approximately a year, the battalion sergeant major and colonel came down and basically asked me to come up to the battalion level and start doing this for the 1,200 to 1,500 soldiers that we had within the battalion. I heard through this old sergeant major that was retired about Eagle Summit Ranch. So I went out there and I kind of researched it and attending this and reading their curriculum that they offered and kind of looking at their layout of the facility and how the beauty, the segregation that it has from the city life itself, where it's too active and too busy. So I went back to the unit and actually kind of gave the sergeant major and the colonel an FYI of what this has to offer and whatnot. So they was like, okay, write it up, take their curriculum, write it up, and then send it to JAG, get JAG's authorization or recommendations in the sense. So for about 3 months back and forth, we kind of worked between all the different elements and was able to start sending soldiers out there within 3 or 4 months to their first session out there. So we sent 12 or 13 soldiers out there, and not anybody can just attend. We wanted to select those individuals that were really having the hardest time. From the moment they got there and felt relaxed because they were not being shunned or shadowed right now, you could almost see the instant change from the soldiers. And as the days went on, with the one-on-one sessions with Dave or with Matt, you would still see a couple of them that were very shy. Over a day or 2 day transition, I mean, you could automatically see them come out of their shell. And they were opening up and talking among one another and pull Dave off to the side and really have that one-on-one session of, man, I really need this because I don't know how to do this. you could just see those automatic transitions. And then come to graduation night, and to hear the soldiers speak of this week-long little event, is how that has made them overcome that factor that was scaring them or putting them behind and saying, I can't come out of this shell. It was like night and day transitions. And for anybody that ever attend one of those ceremonies, I don't think there's a man or a woman out there that could not cry after hearing one of those stories. To see from the day that they were selected to the day that they left, just that short time frame of how they've really transitioned. But now that's not the only thing. You know, that's just one stepping stone, just a layer on the cake, actually. When they come back to the unit, that's the real testing point. Because now, are they going to truly keep up with what they've learned, for those tools that they were given to be a better husband, better father, and as a better soldier? Where they've truly jumped up and actually started becoming that leader that they once were, started talking to other soldiers again, and then getting off of certain medications, or to get away from that alcohol, or doing the overdoses that there were, or that suicidal intentions that they had. Those were big factors that kept myself as a firm believer that this was a working program. And then their family camps. The process continues, because at that point, you get to have your family involved. You get to reconnect with your family, your loved ones, your son or daughter, or the wife that you haven't seen or had that connection with for a long time because you either deployed or your injuries that you sustained, you was in a hospital, whatever. So Dave allows you to have those moments with your family again, fully offered by him and his staff, to further process you in that healing process. And then the relationships that you build from that point, and from that point to that point, is like a spider web, and it's just constantly growing and getting bigger. Dave still travels, you know, overseas to the front lines with the generals and etc. And to see that he's willing to put himself right there at the front line with those soldiers, and that he's not giving up. So the things that I keep showing and telling the soldiers, why should you give up? If this guy is at this age and he's been moving this whole time like that, what's stopping you? Once they get done with this and the tools that were given to them, they have truly committed themselves. He's just saying, I can just do it. I can be the better person that I am.
So there are times when we have to watch and learn from ourselves. I think our biggest critics are ourselves, and you can probably agree with that, because we're either our best encouragement or our worst enemy. And you guys in particular, as you've gone through and as your kids have watched and learned to portray and act as you have, be upbeat. Take time with your kids. Take times with your kids. Don't abandon them. Don't abandon them. This is one thing that I can say again, that Dad really worked with us, because we did everything together. And when I say everything together, when I started traveling at 2 weeks old, we were in a little Airstream travel trailer all over the country, you know. And then we went from an Airstream travel trailer to a bus, and from a bus we were in an airplane gallivanting, you know, this place, church after church, soldier after soldier, you know, family after family. And we were a ministering family to be able to help those that needed help. That was our calling, and that's what we did. As we've gone through these things, I've become very resilient. And you'll learn this too, that kids are the most resilient people on the face of the earth. They're not expecting you to be perfect. They just want you to be real. And if you will keep your promise, that means everything. If you're going to say you're going to do something, then do it. Do it. If you're going to take them snow skiing, then go snow skiing. Whatever it is, do it. And if there's a situation that causes you, you know, a financial stress, and you have to say, hey, wait a minute, I can't do it right now, but we can do it at this time, they're going to understand. They may be a little upset at first, as some kids will be, of course, but they'll understand. But you've got to talk to them square, you know. And I'm not talking about grabbing them by the throat. Well, you got to do it this way. Oh, man, because that right there puts up a wall. And the boundaries. You know, that's something that we really have to work on, is how far can we push? Now, I have 2 sons of my own, and if I am not careful, I could hand down bad traits. I could hand down bad traits. I don't want to do that, because I want my kids to have the best of everything that they can, but I want them to live in a realistic world. You know, I don't want to give them some false sense of fantasy that, oh, it's going to be like this. No, I want them to live in a real world, so with real struggles. So I give them room to grow. I give them room to grow. So it's a real fine line that you will have to work with on how far your boundaries are with your children. How far do you get in? You know, how much do you correct them, or how much do you let them expand and grow on their own? But the most important thing is this, is that you're in their lives. Now that you are back, and a lot of you have retired out, you're still dealing with your injuries. Don't let your injuries take precedent over your kids. You know, because they can feel like they get lost, and that abandonment just expands, and it gets worse and worse and worse, and it can turn into all kinds of stuff. And then they'll repress that anger inside. They won't say anything about it, and then they'll begin to show it. They'll begin to show it, and then they're going to start doing things that you wish that they had never done. So how do we be a part of their lives? We spend time with them. If it's to take a little tea set and sit with your girls and drink tea, then so be it. Or maybe it's your boys and it's time with a ball glove. You know, that you got a ball glove in hand, you're out there catching them, you know, you're teaching them how to throw. Maybe your injuries have stopped you that you can't be in that, but you can be in their lives. You can give them encouragement. You can give them examples of maybe some of the things that you've gone through and how that you've pushed to be able to make it to where you are today. They're gonna acknowledge that. They're going to acknowledge that, and you are going to imprint upon them. Just like a little duck when it sees its mother for the first time, and it imprints, and it says, oh, I must be a duck. The same thing will be said about your kids. Your kids will look at you and they'll say, oh, well, my dad's a whiner and a complainer. Well, then I can be a whiner and a complainer. But if they see you as an overcomer and an overachiever, then they're going to see the same thing. Well, that's what I can be. That's what I want to be, because you will leave to them. You will leave to them good traits or bad traits. What do you want to leave? Do you want to leave them benefits or consequences? Because like what we said beforehand, monkey see, monkey do. Now once again, I'm going to tell you this. How do we make it happen? Is that we make a conscious decision to keep our family in the graces of God. He is our answer.
It was on a hot day in July 1969, and I almost hesitate to say that because I know a lot of young people think that's right after the War of 1812. But it was a day that will live in infamy in my life. It was my first introduction to the real suffering of war. When I say I hate war, I'm not exaggerating or overstating it. It rapes, it plunders, it disfigures, it dismembers, it destroys. It takes away the dreams. Children that should have been will never be. Grandkids will never show on the scene of life of a family because somewhere someone paid a price for freedom. And as much of a cliche as it may be, freedom still is not free. So whether you're from an era of old guys like me, Vietnam veterans, or you're of the new modern day war on terror, the circumstances may be changed with time, but the outcome is virtually identical. Because war tears a life apart, guys come home and families start to fall apart. Relationships that were vowed to endure till death do us part, they don't even really get to the threshold of a decade. Sometimes they don't even come home to the same relationship they left a year earlier with. I guess what I'm trying to say is there are scars all over us. Scars on the soul, scars on the body. But a scar is three things. Are you ready for this? I think you'll grow with me on this one. A scar is evidence you got hurt. It's evidence you got over it. And it's evidence of empathy. If I were to say to you, and I've never been divorced, and you have been, I know how you feel. I'd be lying. I've never gone down that road of suffering, you know. But if you've never been burned over half your body, you've never looked down and seen your own heart beating, and you've never witnessed the pumping of blood out of an open artery, you don't know how I feel. But what we have the same in essence is this. We have a scar. We've been hurt. And I want to tell you today, no matter where your original pain came from, it's where it is right now that matters. And for some of you, you've lost the most precious gift of all. You lost hope. Hope. Where do you go without hope? Today, our precious military, one a day, on an average, one a day, take their life because they lost hope. There was no recovery. There was no return to what you believed was you, the real you. Some of you precious wives, your husband went one way and came home so changed. You don't know who he is anymore. Some of you guys left a woman you loved and came home and found out that that relationship was destroyed in your absence. You lost your hope. But let me tell you something. The man talking to you knows where to find hope. All my career, I've struggled with my scars. I've always wondered, what does it look like to other people? And I was afraid my children would be embarrassed or my wife would leave me. Well, I'm happy to tell you I'm in my 48th year of marriage. I got 2 kids and 4 grandkids, and nobody went anywhere. We're all still together. Because way back when, as we usually say, I made a decision. I decided that I would make a commitment of my life to a higher power than my own. And I believed that there was a God and a man named Jesus Christ, his son. And I chose to follow him. I followed him, and it took me to places on this planet that people shouldn't have to go. I've sacked up the dead bodies, sent them home. I held them in my arms in Baghdad not long ago. And one of them, 19 years old, from Indianapolis, Indiana, with no skin left on his entire body, 100% third degree, looked up at me with eyes wondering what the next moment would be. And I looked at him and I said, "You're more than a soldier. You're a sacrifice on the altar of freedom. And on behalf of a grateful nation, I came to tell you thank you." A small shudder and a great young American passed from my arms to the arms of God. Where will you go when the end comes? Where will you be? What is your hope? If you've never found that hope, I hope you find it in Christ. I'm Dave Reaver, and this is War and Recovery.